Welcome to our latest podcast. I'm Chuck Marple, your host, and I'm here with my daughter and co-host Karen E. How are you doing today on this fine Thursday morning, Karen?
I'm good, but like you said, I keep thinking it's Friday. So that's always a big disappointment when it's not actually Friday, when you keep thinking it's Friday.
See, because you're like in a semi-retirement, you're the same thing. One day is the same as the other in some respects,
Yep.
but it's when you really retired, it really is the same. You have to tell yourself, "Well, what day is today?" Today we're going to look at we're going to revisit a little bit with the Roe versus Wade and what it means for women, and we're going to do some other topics on our news and views today. One of the things that constantly is, I think, a fear is that the Roe versus Wade overturning with this Supreme Court is not the end of it. What do you think?
I don't know. I've seen separate things, like the majority opinion that it was a standalone thing and it shouldn't be taken to overturn anything else. And then, Clarence Thomas specifically saying that he's looking to target other things. But what I think maybe surprised some of people is how the majority of the public has reacted to this. Most people support abortion at some level, whether it's, life of the mother, rape, incest victims, those sorts of things. And it's a very small minority that don't believe in even those caveats to it. So I think a super majority probably support it in some way or another. So I think the reason, or not the reason, because the public has reacted so fiercely to this and the other things that follow along with it, contraception, gay marriage, and all that, those are actually way more people in the public support those than abortion, according to numbers. And so, if abortion, which had a lower percentage of people that approved of it, are reacting this way, I think the Supreme Court may realize that they really cannot take away those things without a major revolt.
It could be. I think the thing that we need to do is almost clarify the trueness of what it is. For them to say pro life, and I've said this before, is hypocrisy because the majority of the people who are against abortion are also in favor of capital punishment. A potential life versus a definitive life, whether no matter, I don't care what they've done wrong. And 10% of the people who are executed, they've said over history or more, have been innocent and proven innocent later on. And probably the percentage of truly innocent is on there, even if you take away the whole concept of life. But it is a very serious thing. And I think what bothers me is it's shown the Supreme Court to be so focused on their own personal agenda, which is not in the agenda of the majority of people, as you said. Uh, we have not seen something that controversial and that bad for the Supreme Court since the Fugitive Slave Act was reaffirmed in the Dred Scott decision in 1857. And I thought, that is such a big thing. In fact, last night or was actually on Tuesday night, Colbert had AOC on, Alexandria Cortez, and she was going back on there. She had a little mix up on who on the date on it, but she talked about that same thing, how major this is, just like the that Dred Scott decision. We could go all day as we did on the other most of the time on this, but we all know that this is not a popular decision. This is put in by a president, mostly a president, who did not receive the majority of the votes then and got whooped in this last election. There's no way to say it, but whooped. 7 million votes is a big number to lose by. And he lost electoral college by the same number that he won it the first time. So let's go look at something a little bit more worldwide. One of the things I find very fascinating about the effects of Putin invading Ukraine, how he's driven two countries that have historically been non aligned. Finland, which really has been non aligned since World War II, and even more importantly, Sweden, who's been non aligned for nearly 300 years. And he was pushed them into out of the fear of what he had done in the Ukraine.
I
What do you
think
think
that
of those?
I think honestly, I think of Finland and Sweden as kind of like the people that just want to stay out of it. They just want to stay out of politics. They want to be everybody's friend. They want to get along with everybody. And so they don't have the strongest militaries. They don't have the most built up defenses because they get along with everybody. And when you see Ukraine get attacked so brutally for no good reason, that just, it's all fabricated, you start to fear that that could happen to you. And suddenly it's like, well, I've got to take sides. And there's Russia that is brutal. Like, I don't, I can't say that their military is highly trained and very good and effective anymore, but they have a very large military. They have a lot of equipment. And when you're within striking range, it's either be friendly with them, which isn't going to go well with other big countries that you probably agree with more politically, or align with the big group and get yourself some protection. And I think that's where they came from with this.
Oh,
Let me just get protection from the big group that's on the right side of history.
well, I agree. And then one of the things that they're seeing is that Russia was willing to attack one of the largest militaries in Central Europe, in the Ukraine. And at one time, Ukraine had nuclear weapons in there, and there was a big division of that at the end of the Soviet Union. And it is, and it's a major thing. Finland is a very dangerous country for Russia because they showed that back in World War II how they fought back when Russia invaded them. But the happiest countries that with Finland and Sweden coming in are Estonia, Latvia, and Lithuania, the Baltic countries, because they are small, very, very small forces, and they are right there. And they've been invaded by Russia many times. They actually welcomed Germany in the beginning with the Nazis coming in and liberating them. And they found out the Nazis were no better than Stalin. So, and then
Yeah,
they had to
and
serve all these years.
I think a lot of people underestimated Ukraine, and I almost feel like Zelensky wanted that, like, because I know that we were unaware of how feisty they were and how fiercely protective they were of their country. Like some of the things that I've learned about them, and I think you told me one of them about, some of the ordinary citizens flying drones and reporting Russian locations because they're playing with toy drones, things like that. Everybody's on the side of Ukraine except for the Russian sympathizers, which is, the excuse that Putin made. But it just blows my mind that they love their country so much that they would put themselves in harm's way, even as untrained citizens that are doing whatever they can to contribute.
Not only that, since they were able to do it, so many millions of the people who left Ukraine have come back, and in Kiev and other cities, even though they're still under attack occasion, they're making a life again, which is fascinating.
I saw that
Uh,
Russia is leaving Snake Island,
yeah, I saw that
and
this
that's
morning too.
a huge moral boost.
What they're trying to say is they're doing it because to make it easier for Ukraine to export grain. But the truth of the matter is that, as the people in Odessa said, it's because now they have those big howitzers that we gave them and everything, and they're getting bombarded on there, and they really can't defend it. And they can't bring their ships in to defend it that well because now Ukraine has harpoon anti-ship missiles. So after sinking the Moskva, they've got to really, really worry about what can be done. The problem
Yeah,
that we face on here is a problem that really was a horrible thing for my generation and less so for your generation. I was brought up in the time of the Cold War. I was brought up in time of the Cuban Missile Crisis, where we came within a hairbreadth of having at least tactical nuclear weapons used. We had nuclear weapons on board of cruisers. We had and they had nuclear weapons on board of submarines, and they almost came in direct conflict. That would not have been good. Thank God, cooler heads prevailed. uh, Khrushchev linked, and we made some changes as where we had missiles in Turkey, so it came out. But we still went through the time. You looked at a transistor radio at the time, and it had two little diamonds on it, or triangles on it, and they were called Conelrad stations. Every other station would have gone off in an emergency, and those would have been on telling us what was going on. What was going. You go to a fair, and they showed you how to make fallout shelters, tell you how to cover, and all these kinds of things. And I was hoping at the end of the Soviet Union and when we were getting along with Russia that maybe we're over that, and yet here we have nuclear saber rattling again by Russia, and then we have added Iran as a possibility in there. We have added North Korea as a definitive in there, and who knows with China? They're kind of always an unknown.
Yeah, in the military, you're always looking at the potential threats and planning for any one of those situations or all of them if they all decided to go rogue at the same time. How do we do that? That's the sort of thing that you don't want to see, but you always have to be prepared for.
Yeah, there was a study I read many years ago, probably 20 plus. It's called the TTAP study, and it was led by Carl Sagan when he was alive down in Cornell. And what they did computer simulations of what 50 nuclear weapons hitting the US and 50 nuclear weapons hitting Russia would do. And the big thing that came out of it was the temperature drop. And the temperature drop would have been 30 or 40 degrees on the average temperature around at least the northern hemisphere and to a certain amount in the southern hemisphere as well. And that was when they came up with the term of nuclear winter. And this is tactical or small strategic weapons. These aren't the 6,000 weapons that are available or more to be used by just those two nations, which would exterminate civilization as we know it. So it's a scary time again. God willing, we won't have that, but it's still scary because we were always learned about the idea of mutually assured destruction or the MAD theory. And that said that if one shoots, the other's going to shoot back, and eventually it's going to be destroy both nations plus everybody around the globe. So again, God willing, we won't have those kinds of things. Let's just make more interesting bombshell if you want. The bombshell of Cassidy Hutchinson. I mean, I was thinking when they had first said it was an intimate in there and it was and doing it so suddenly with 24 hours notice and high security and everything, I thought it might be Pat Cipollone, but it wasn't. It was a not much farther below her, and somebody that Trump said he had barely knew, and they showed plenty of pictures of her being within 3 feet or 4 feet of the ex president. So, and everybody else said she was well known. To watch her testimony, it was a very fascinating time because she was so matter of fact. She'd smile and laugh at certain times, but the most fact, it was just like it was in there, and you could see her passion at the same time. I was extremely impressed. She was probably the best all around witness they've had.
What I bet happened is that she got subpoenaed, didn't she? I don't think she didn't volunteer to be there, and she wasn't going to get the same level of protection as some of the other people that have refused to testify. And I feel like she probably felt left out in the cold and thought, well, I have to do this and I have to be honest. I'm not going to lie and go down with this ship because all these people were there and all these people saw this. So I'm just going to have to say what happened.
Yep, and when that was they wanted her to ignore the subpoena, she got a different lawyer, and her lawyer was there behind her. Yeah, and she was willing, and she testified. I mean, so matter of factly about all these facts and all these things on here, and she's still standing by her testimony of what she was told by the deputy um, chief of staff and the Secret Service agent that was on there and talking about it. So it's going to be interesting to see how that plays out. I'll tell you right now, if I was Pat Cipollone after what had been said, I would be out there talking to the committee and giving everything that I know because I'm now been put in big time jeopardy by not doing it.
Yeah, and I think for a lot of people, they've seen what Trump has done and how he has ruined people, financially and their reputation if he decides that he doesn't like you for whatever reason and you speak out about your truth. You look at all the people, this collateral damage from his inner circle, like Michael Cohen and Omarosa, and all of these people that he worked with at some point that have come out and said what they saw and what happened with them, and all of their stories are the same. Michael Cohen, that was what 3 years ago now, And I
Right.
watched his testimony as he was testifying, and he talked about those sort of, like, big mafia tactics and the intimidation. Like, no, he didn't explicitly say this, but you knew what he meant. And that is a pattern that continues to repeat itself in all of these witnesses.
Yeah, the first time I saw anything about that was in Comey's book way early on, and he said it reminded him, Trump reminded him of when he was prosecuting mafia dons, where they do it and they're just moving up the ladder. And that's what this committee is doing, and it looks like this is what the Justice Department is doing too, moving up the ladder as they go and do these very things. They've gone after Eastman's phone, who was a big thing. And I think the big thing they're going to be pushing at this point, anyways, is the attempt to defraud the nation by the fake electors and everything going on there, because that's a definitive federal crime that they're going to be able to do to work on. And I just think what she had said is important, and I think critical to this. And she has to worry. I mean, look at what happened to those poor poll workers in Georgia. It was. I was disgusted that this woman had to give up a business by her name, and her daughter doesn't want to go shopping with her because she's afraid her mother's going to call her a name and somebody's going to shoot her or try and hurt her. Speaking
Yeah.
of hurt, I don't know if you saw the little video of Giuliani. Did you see that little video?
No.
Okay, he was in a supermarket and he had gone to the men's room and came back out, and all these people adoring him, kissing him, hugging him, and all this stuff. Supposedly, it didn't look quite that what the video said. And this person comes up and taps him on the back, like. Now he said this person pushed him so hard, this woman who was near him actually almost fell over too. Looked at the video, and he put all this stuff out before the video came out. He looked at the video. The guy, it'd be like, I just touched your back. But for Giuliani, it was a big, big thing. I saw that on Colbert. It was an unbelievably minor thing that he's trying to make into he was attacked. All,
It's
all,
not
all those
surprising.
No, all these things. Your mother and I agree that these people like Eastman and Giuliani should never be able to practice law again anywhere.
It's surprising to me how many people don't understand it. I don't know. Have you ever watched Jordan Klepper on the
No,
Daily Show? He does
no.
a lot of things. Like if you look him up, he does a lot of videos where he goes to different Trump rallies and he talks to people. And I watched one this morning it's the most recent one, I believe. He went to Mississippi to one of the Trump rallies and he was talking to people and his big thing was, "Are you watching the January 6th hearings?" And there were these two girls and they didn't know and they didn't even know what he was talking about. And there was this other guy he talked to and he said, "Are you watching the hearings?" And the guy was like, "No." And his wife was like, "We're not wasting time on that. That's just a crazed mob of people going after the president for their own political agenda." And and Jordan goes, "So a bunch of angry people that don't agree with what's happened and they want to kill somebody and they want to like change the course of something. They're like, yeah. And he's like, and you don't like that. And they're like, no, that is not okay. And he was like, got it. And like that's the kind of stuff that he does is he sort of turns it's the same. I don't know if you've seen Kim's Daily Show clip. It's that guy. He turns your words on you and you'll like actually make his point for him because you're not paying attention. Like, and he showed them some of the things from the hearing, and like he showed them what Ivanka said, how she, Bill Barr said there was no fraud, and she said she believed that. And one guy was like, "That's not her. She's under duress. That doesn't. It's a clone. That's a clone of Ivanka." And it was like, wow, the cognitive dissonance that you're practicing to believe such craziness.
And it is craziness. I don't know where we're going to go with about 30% of our population is still, as they used to say, drinking the Kool-Aid. Hey,
It's
for
just
leaders don't know what the drinking the Kool-Aid is. They may not realize that there is a real precedence on that. And I actually have an anecdote that goes with that. Many years ago, back in the early '80s, I believe it was, there was a guy out in California named Jim Jones, and he had bought some land from in I think it was Guyana, and he took his whole people down there called Jonestown, and they got down there and they were living their own life, basically it was a cult, and some people, some family, complained to the government, so a congressman went down there and ended up being shot. So next thing you know, that they send FBI or whatever down there, and what they found was over 1,000 people. All the people in that had drank Kool-Aid laced with cyanide because they believed all the lies that Jim Jones was telling them. And they gave the Kool-Aid to their children. They watched their children die, and then they killed themselves.
There's
Now,
a
I did.
really good documentary on that actually that I've watched, and it turns out there's a lot more people that were forcefully injected with it. A lot of people were like, wait a minute, what, we're really doing this. But what he did was he normalized this action of like, oh, there's people coming, we got to do the thing. And they would all like practice this. And they did that for a couple of years. So it became a thing that they just did, and it never seemed weird to them. So when it really happened, some of them just did it. Like they didn't even think twice about it. And some of them were like, wait, this is real? Like the kids? We didn't do it this way before. And those people, there were some that were shot too, that just
Yeah, and
tried to get away.
a few 2 or 3 years after that, I was co-teaching a class on CPR with a man who was was a medical technologist that worked in the for the government in the entrance exams for military people, people in the Army, Air Force, and so on, that went on there. And he got to talk about it. He had been one of the first people down there, and he said the smell after those people decaying for several days before they got down there was horrendous. And they had gas masks and everything they were using. They used and they had to put extra Lysol on their filters like every 30 minutes in there just to keep the smell from nauseating them continuously. And then he was down
Yeah.
there like 5 or 6 days taking care of those bodies, and it was just an unbelievably horrible experience. And that really brought it home to me that I had actually known somebody who had actually been there. So it was quite a thing. So when people talk about drinking the Kool-Aid, they're referring to how people can be brainwashed to the extent of taking of being violent to themselves or violent to others. So that's where
And
it
that's
trace.
but what it is, and it's what has happened with Trump. You do these things until they're normalized. Like you look in the media now, and there's no people are so mean. They make comments about women's appearances and things like professional people because he called that reporter's horse face, and he mocked handicapped people, and he did all these things, and at first people were like, oh, well, that's just kind of how he is, but then they started doing it, and now there's so many people that are so mean and nasty, and they don't think about what they say before they say it or how it might be hurtful. It doesn't cost anybody anything to just be kind to strangers. You don't have to love everybody, but you can be kind for a couple minutes in interactions with strangers.
Yeah, yeah. There is so much meanness out there, and I will not say that all people on the left are nice to everybody on the right. I think that we need to be able to talk. It just is that uh, there's people on the left are more willing to investigate what is true and not true, and people on the right seem to be willing to follow it. I mean, some of it is education, some of it is where you live, so much of it is out there. But the fact that one person could do this proves how vulnerable human beings are to the big lie.
But
The big
then
lie,
what
back to Hitler.
what you do, and it's really common way to manipulate people, like in cults and in all kinds of things, is you like there's two things. It's fear. You get people to be scared of a thing, or you figure out what they're scared of and you figure out how to speak to that fear. And the other part is flattery, or you're part of something bigger than yourself. It's how the military indoctrinates. It's how all of these cults indoctrinate. You're special because you're going to do these things to help people. I really believe I've watched a lot of cult documentaries, Scientology and Jonestown and Nexium and just any cult documentary that's out there, I've probably already seen it because it's fascinating to me how these like scores of people get manipulated. But when you watch the initial episodes on the well done ones, what they do is they show you what's good about it. They show you you feel like you're part of a community. You feel like you are doing good things to help other people. You feel like you have something special. And then they start to talk about the fear, and that's how they get you afraid of the government. And that's how they get you to do weird things like go away on a ship with L. Ron Hubbard, like strange things like that that don't make any sense when you're on the outside looking in. But once you get brought in the fold, it doesn't seem like anything to mortgage your house a third time to pay for new Scientology books. Like, and that is how it's all of these cults are different in their own weird way, but that is the basis of it. And that I see that same structure in a lot of things. I see it with, evangelicals, and I see it with Trumpsters and people that get caught up in a group.
That may be one thing we discuss the role of religion in what's going on in here, both good and bad, because it is, and we tend to ignore God in these arguments and what they're doing. We tend to think that we are on the God's on our side, rather than saying God is not on any side. God's on the side of God, and what His plan is for all of us. And it gets very complicated when you do it. But that might be an interesting topic for us to explore in the future as well. Well, we covered a lot of things in a relatively short time on this day. We're going to try and do at least one a week of these podcasts for as far as I can see for a while, because there's so much to talk and there's so many changes day by day. So thank you for the time again, Karen, co-hosting here and your news and views as well as my own. We appreciate that. And thank you, listeners, for being out there and supporting us. I see we're getting some increase in listeners once again, and I appreciate that. So God bless you. God take care of you. God bless our great country and all of its legitimate leaders. Have a great morning and weekend and celebrate the 4th of July coming up. Celebrate being an American. We're still one of the greatest countries in the world, not the greatest. We can still make it better again. Good morning.